Opel Monza A1 1978 to 1982. The Monza was planned as a successor for the Commodore Q. In the late 1970s, the Commodore C model was made as a two-door version, as was the Record D1, but still as a sedan-type car. The first model of the Commodore the A series had a regular Q in the production line, and Opel desired to make a newer version of their large luxury Q. Work began in 1976, and in 1978 the first Monzas were available to buy. The cars to compete with would be the Mercedes-Benz C123 and later the Mercedes-Benz C124 and the BMW 6 Series, E24, models, coupe models, and any other large luxury coupe. But what Opel hadn't realized was that the old ways were too old. The car was big without being hugely luxurious. This did not mean that the Monza was not comfortable. There was plenty of space inside the car, and the enormous seats left you with a feeling of sitting in a much more upmarket brand than Opel. The internals consisted of parts mainly borrowed from the Record D1 and later the E2, which meant cloth seats, and much plastic on the dashboard and inner doors. Even the rev counter and the tachometer was taken directly from the Record D models, so that when you sat in one, the feeling was not that you drove a Monza, but more that you were driving a Record. If that wasn't enough trouble for Opel, they also experienced gearbox problems. The engine range for the Monza A1 was the 3.0S, the 2.8S, the newly developed 3.0E and later the 2.5E. The 3.0 had 180 bhp and 248 Nm with fuel injection, gave a wide range. The 3-speed Borg-Warner automatic transmission from the Commodore range needed to be modified to cope with the new and improved power outputs. Opel's own 4-speed manual gearboxes were not up to the job, and, instead of putting in a more modern 5-speed manual gearbox, Opel turned to gearbox and transmission producer Getrag, and installed the Getrag 264 4-speed manual gearbox in the early Monzas. But when people bought a big, luxurious Q, they wanted modern products as well, and Opel obliged, as soon the Getrag 240, for the 2.5 engines, and the Getrag 265, for the 3.0E, both 5-speed manual gearboxes, replaced the old 4-speed gearbox. The Monza, however, sharing the same layout as the Senator A1, had very good driving abilities. It handled quite well, thanks to the newly developed McPherson strut system for the front of the car, as used on the Record E1 and E2, and the new, previously Opel had always used a non-independent rear axle on the Record E1 and E2, Manta, Ascona etc. Independent rear suspension gave the car soft, yet firm and capable, driving characteristics and excellent stability for such a big car. The engine range, however non-economical, was also very good, and few problems with the extremely reliable engines, even today, some 30 years later. The 6-cylinder engines were all of the C-type, camshaft in head, and were in reality at 2.0-liter straight 4 with just 2 more cylinders. Many parts on the engine, such as the water pump and drivetrain, are in fact the same parts as used on the 4-cylinder version. This meant that this was an engine not only tested for many years in the Commodore, Admiral and Diplomat range, but also very reliable. Although the first generation of 3.0E engines in the Monza A1 had overheating problems when standing still, this could easily be fixed by fitting an oil cooler. When Opel realized that the public disliked the Record interior, they introduced the C package. The C cars were fitted with extra instruments, oil pressure, voltmeter etc., and the interior was either red, dark blue, green, or brown. As all parts of the interior were colored, it seemed more luxurious than it did previously. The A1 also came with a sports package or S package. The cars all were marked as S models on the front wings, and came with 15-inch Ronal alloy wheels and a 45% limited slip differential. However, being a coupe, it was rather large, and 4 well-sized adults had plenty of space. Even the boot was extremely large, and if that was not enough, people had the possibility to flip down the rear seats to make even more space. The A1 was not a great hit at the customers even though it was fairly cheap to buy, the class of the car taken in consideration, and the fact that it actually got some good reviews by the press. With the 3.0-liter engine, the Monza was at that time the fastest car Opel had ever built, being capable of speeds as high as 215 km per hour, and the 0 to 100 km per hour mark went in just 8.5 seconds.